Welcome, Daniel Nation, to our monthly podcast. This is the Daniel Report, and we're glad to have everybody back on our show tonight. Tonight, I have an awesome guest, an old friend of mine that I've known now for about 5 or 6 years, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. And for those of you that don't know Colonel West, I'm sure the whole country knows who he is, but just in case you don't know who this guy is, Colonel West is a decorated combat veteran. He was a former U.S. congressman from Florida, the former chairman of the Republican Party of the state of Texas, and known nationwide as a strong constitutional conservative and an advocate for faith, family, and pro-constitutional values. Colonel West currently serves as the county chairman for the Dallas County Republican Party. And Colonel, it's really good to have you on the Daniel Report. Thanks for coming on our show tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure and an honor. It's been far too long, Pastor Burden. It's great to be with you. And, congratulations and all the best on your run for Texas State House. We need you down there.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your endorsement as well. Also, let's talk about how we first met. I don't know if you remember this story. I actually wrote about this in my book, Daniel Nation, but we met December 7th, which is appropriate.
Pearl Harbor Day.
The day that shall live in infamy, 2019 at the Empower Texans Gala. And you came up to me and I came up to you, and I had my American flag on the wrong lapel. And you remember what you did in that first encounter?
Yeah, I had to get you on the right side and look, there are many people that I have seen do that. You always have to have your American flag on the side of your heart, which means your left side. And so, hey, that was it.
That was awesome. So Colonel West took my American flag lapel off the wrong side and put it on the correct side, which was amazing. And I thought, man, this guy is a true patriot, that he would love the flag so much that he makes sure that every person is wearing it over their heart. So I was so impressed the very first time I met you, and just had a great first encounter with you. And then back in 2020, you remember that we got Frisco Conservative started, and yes. We helped you run for the state chair of the Republican Party of Texas. What was that like, running for state chair?
It was a great thing to be able to get out all across the state of Texas. It's an incredible state, incredible people. I mean, all type of different terrain and climes. And when you get the opportunity to just listen to folks, it really is the essence of what leadership should be all about. And so I was very thankful to be able to have that opportunity, and to also have the opportunity to run for governor, because people came and said, we think that you would be a good person to challenge the sitting governor. And once again, we got across the state. And I think the most memorable thing I recall was when we had the State Republican Executive Committee meeting in Laredo, Texas. And it was in a hotel that was right there on the border, because there were so many people that were in the Texas Republican State Executive Committee had never seen the border before. And it was an eye-opening experience for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it really was a cool experience for me working with you through that process of becoming chairman, because if you recall, during COVID, that was the convention that never really started, because they kicked us out of the George R. Brown Convention Center, and we had to do everything on Zoom. And I'll never forget being up with all the different, precinct chairs and delegates in the middle of the night. I think we elected you at about 3:30 in the morning.
It was 0 dark 30, as we say in the military. I'll never forget it. I was sitting in a hotel down there in Austin, and the results, finally rolled in, and, they tried to push it off. I guess they figured everyone would go to sleep, but people were strong and resilient. And that's why I was just so impressed and so humbled by the fact that people would stay awake until 3:30 on a Monday morning.
Yeah, it was wild. And I remember I was texting you back and forth, and I was trying not to wake the kids up. I mean, it was pretty wild. And then the first thing we did after you got elected was we held an event at my church called We Are the Storm. It was a big rally that you did. And I remember the whole place was packed out, standing room only. Do you remember that speech you gave about We Are the Storm?
Yes, I do. And it was funny because, we kind of used that as the theme for the Texas Republican Party. And of course, the left was saying, this is one of those, right-wing conspiracy things. I forget the name of the group they tried to associate us with. And I said, no, this is something that, really does come out of the Bible. And it is all about standing through the storm and being resilient, being strong, and, having the winds and the rains beat against you, but your foundation is firm, and you can look at the devil and say, I am the storm.
Yeah, and I'll never forget you. You told that story about how the warrior whispers to the devil and says, "I am the storm."
Yeah.
And then I'll never forget you looked out the audience and you said, "Collin County, Denton County, and Tarrant County are the thin red line for Donald Trump. If he doesn't carry those three counties, he will not carry the state of Texas." And that really became the line of demarcation for us to really get involved with working for Trump in that election. That was a powerful statement you made.
Well, it was a correct statement. I mean, the left continues to have their sights on the state of Texas. And if you think about one of the first thing that I did after becoming chairman for the Republican Party of Texas, I went down to South Texas. And it was interesting because folks said they had never seen a Republican Party chairman in South Texas. And in that 2020 election cycle, we were actually able to flip one of the counties down there, Zapata County. But it created it planted the seeds so that, when Donald Trump comes back and runs in 2024, guess what? He wins 12 or 14 of those border counties down in Texas. So it's always about going out and engaging. And I think that's one of the key things we have to do here in the state of Texas. We've got to go behind the enemy lines where, quote unquote, the Democrats feel that they're safe, like up here in the major urban population center of Dallas County. Just the same as in Austin and Travis County, Houston, Harris County, San Antonio, Bexar County, El Paso County. We've got to get our message into those places because truthfully, when you understand conservative principles and values, everyone gets it. And we just have to draw that contrast.
Yeah, so let's talk about congressional redistricting. Now, there's a big brouhaha going on right now in Texas about trying to add 5 seats to our 38 congressional seats. So what's the big problem with what we're trying to do right now? Why are people upset about this?
Well, the big problem is that the Democrats don't want you to do something that they've been doing consistently and for quite some time. There are 8 states in the United States of America that have 0 Republicans in their congressional delegation. There are 3 states that only have 1. There are 6 or 7 that have 2 to 5. And I think it was just the height of hypocrisy and irony that Texas State House Democrats would abscond from Texas during a special session, and they would go to Illinois. Illinois has got an F rating on their congressional redistricting map. Donald Trump carried 44% in Illinois, but yet they only have 2 Republicans in their congressional delegation. That's not a fair representation. The Texas State Senate Democrats, when they absconded from Texas, they went to the state of Massachusetts, and the state of Massachusetts has 0 Republicans in their congressional delegation. It's been that way for some 3 decades. And it was just laughable when you heard the governor of Massachusetts, Maura Healey, stand up and say that we're going to redistrict just the same as Texas is doing. Well, I'm sorry. What else are you going to do? You're going to put Republicans in a negative role because they're already 0. When you look at Texas, again, Donald Trump won in 2024 by 15 percentage points over Kamala Harris. Like I said, 12 or 14 of those border counties went to Donald Trump. So this is not about race. Everything that the left says has to go back to that fallback position of race. But this is about making sure that Texas has a fair representation as a red state. And when you look at the 38 congressional district seats that we have here, 25 of those seats are Republican, 12 are Democrat. 1 is open because the former Houston mayor, Congressman Sylvester Turner, passed in office, but that was a Democrat seat. So really, it was 13 Democrat seats. So what we're looking at here in Texas is saying there are 3 to 5 seats that should be Republican. And furthermore, when you understand the calculations coming off the last census, Texas and Florida kind of got cheated. When you look at the population increase that we've seen here in the state of Texas, we should have probably 2 more of those congressional districts, and California should lose those 2, and New York should lose 1. The other thing that the Democrats have exposed themselves on is that now we all know that their states, why they want to be sanctuary states, because they want illegals to be counted in the census for congressional representation, which if you're not a citizen, furthermore, if you've committed the felony offense of being here illegally, you should not be counted in the census for congressional representation. You should be escorted out of the country. And this is also the same party that said, we want Puerto Rico and we want Washington, D.C. to become states. For what reason? just so we can have more congressional representation. So the whole issue about this, and they have egg on their face, is that they are upset because all of a sudden Donald Trump said, "Why aren't we doing what they do?" And for the progressive, socialist, Marxist left, that is the height of making them go through an apoplectic meltdown when you turn their tricks on them.
Yeah, and I heard Gavin Newsom had a meltdown. Aren't they trying to basically counterbalance by adding 5 more Democrat seats in California?
Yeah, and again, think about this in California, and I was just out in Newport Beach, California, a couple of weeks ago. There's somewhere between 40 to 43% of a Republican electorate, but they only have 17% Republican congressional representation. So again, there's an unfair balance. And what Gavin Newsom is saying, first and foremost, he's going to have a hard time doing it because they have an independent redistricting committee out there that the people voted for. So he can't just call up and say that we're going to do this here in the state assembly and the state senate. He's got to, first of all, get a ballot referendum that allows the people to vote on it. And right now, 62 to 63% of the folks in California say they don't want any political party to be doing redistricting. They wanted it to stay with the independent commission. So what Gavin Newsom is talking about is picking up people and moving them into Republican areas and districts to try to, further dilute their representation. But, be very careful. We have this thing called Forward Dallas here, where this was a plan that came out of the Obama administration, was to get more multi-purpose housing into single family housing communities. So guess what they do? They try to dilute that voting base there.
Yeah, that's scary. It's a good thing that Pastor Cheon is running for governor in California, and maybe we can finally get rid of Gavin Newsom. So let's talk about the Democrats in Texas. So they walked out on us so that they could basically not have a quorum down there in the Texas House. We couldn't conduct our redistricting, and so the special session ran out. And of course, we've seen everything from we're going to throw you in jail to we're taking away your committee positions to we're going to take you off the budget committee to blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Now the Democrats have walked right back into the second special session. Has anything happened, and is anything going to happen to these Democrats?
No, it doesn't seem so. And again, first and foremost, this was predictable, and it was preventable. We know that the Democrats did the exact same thing in 2011. They absconded to Oklahoma, so they were a little bit closer, and it was, again, all about redistricting. Then they did it 4 years ago, and we all remember that, 2021, when it was about election integrity and our voting systems here in Texas. So why did we not think that they would, pull the same trick again, especially when the House of Representatives Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, for whatever reason, flew down to Austin, Texas? Why do you think he was in Austin, Texas? So the Speaker of the House, Dustin Burrows, when he gavelled an adjournment from the special session on a Wednesday, when we had those maps, they had been voted out of committee. We should have gone right straight to a House floor vote. He gave them 4 days to figure out exactly what they were going to do, and we saw what they did. But this time they weren't treated as kings and queens, and when they went to Washington, D.C., they got a lot of egg on their face, and so they ended up having to come back. This bill was passed in the Texas State Senate because you did have 2 Senate Democrats that stayed here. I think it's Judith Zaffirini and Chuy Hinojosa. And so that they had the quorum of 21, so they were able to pass it. Of course, they got to redo it again now in the second session, but it's already been shown that they can get it passed in the Texas State Senate. Now we got to do it in the Texas State House. The bottom line is that when you run away like this, the number one thing is your seat's vacated. If it had been Governor West, all of their personal effects would have been moved out of the office, put out there in the hallway. We would have immediately cut off their direct pay. So if you want to get paid, you got to show up to pick up your check. We would have cut off your per diem. Furthermore, we would have cut off immediately after 24 to 48 hours all of your administrative pay, so your staff doesn't get paid. Now, I tell you what, I bet there are some Democrat staff members that would have said, get your butt back down here because I got bills to pay. So you got to, crank up the level of pain on people, because what happens is if they're not immediate consequences and ramifications, they're going to pull the same antics once again. And so now we have them back, and you already have some of the people, Gene Wu and another a member of the Texas State House. They're having a sit-in the House of Representatives floor, and so it just this immaturity. We should not tolerate this. And so again, someone has to be the adult in the room. And so we'll see if the governor and Dustin Burrows finally found their big boy pants and they put it on, and they hold these people accountable and responsible.
Yeah, absolutely. Ever since Burrows got elected, and of course, not just this session, but all the sessions previous, our party is always talking about how, well, it's the Democrats that are in charge of everything. Well, when the Democrats can just walk out and in quorum for a special session, would you say that the Democrats are the ones running the state, not the Republicans?
Well, first and foremost, let's understand, how did Speaker of the House Dustin Burrows get to be Speaker of the House? It's because 36 of the House Republicans joined with 49 House Democrats. And I guarantee those 49 House Democrats that voted for him to be the Texas House Speaker were part of that 56 that absconded and went to Illinois. There's no doubt about that. So once again, when you're making deals with the devil, guess what's going to happen? The devil's going to call in his card at some point. So we should have had a Speaker of the House that was elected, as according to the rules, from within that Republican caucus. We didn't. And so, yeah, you empowered them and made them vice chairs. You say, well, they're not chairman, but they're vice chairs. You created all of these powers that they have. You gave them, additional funding. So guess what? Once again, they said, hey, we got away with it. We're going to turn around and bite you. I haven't heard of any of them having their committee vice chair positions or any positions taken away from them. And we got the same problem in the United States House of Representatives. When you have a person, a member of our Congress, that stands up and calls our immigrations and customs enforcement agents terrorists, she should have her security clearance revoked. When you have someone that says, I'm Guatemalan first and then American, you're in the United States House of Representatives. You have your security clearance revoked. When you have someone like Rashida Tlaib, who is flying the flag of a terrorist organization outside of her congressional office, which the American taxpayers pay for, she should have her security clearance revoked. So that's how we got to get tough.
Yeah, I agree. So let's segue now into our own party. Let's talk about our rules. The Republican Party of Texas is a party that lives and dies by the rules. Yet we were able to somehow flaunt the rules and selecting the Speaker of the House by going over and working with the Democrats. And now we got this little thing called Rule 44, which apparently there's supposed to be some repercussions to not following our platform. Can you explain how our party rules are supposed to work and how it's supposed to protect the Republican voters that sent these guys to Austin?
Well, again, within our own party, we are supposed to have elected officials that will be responsible and accountable. And when you have people that are getting out there in the hot Texas sun, there are, block walking, door knocking, doing all of these things to help, people get elected. And then they get down to Austin, Texas, and they say, okay, we know what's best and we know what's better. And we're going to cut these deals. That's a slap in the face to especially grassroots constitutional conservatives here in Texas and the people that gather at the Republican Party conventions every other year to pass a platform. And the big thing is that everyone has tolerated this once again. And so now we're in a position, we here in Dallas County voted to censor two of our representatives, and that's Morgan Meyer and Angie Chin Button. We sent all the paperwork down there to the State Republican Executive Committee. But what do elected officials do? What do these, being a Republican and Democrat? Now they're threatening lawsuits. And everyone is running scared. They don't want to see that happen. So truthfully, I will tell you, Pastor Burden, and I look forward to calling you State Representative Burden soon. I don't see anything happening to these individuals because, once again, they're going out and getting these high-powered, quote unquote, legal representatives, like they sent Eric Opiella to sit there in our county executive committee meeting. And I was, that close from, expelling him from the meeting. I was trying to be accommodating, but he kept trying to interject himself into our process. So I'm not going to be, coerced, and I'm definitely not going to be intimidated. So we did pass those censure resolutions, but I don't see anything going anywhere from the state Republican executive committee and the Republican Party of Texas.
Yeah, and that's really disturbing because we are a nation of law. We're a nation of rules. You break the rules, you get penalized.
Remember Robert Francis O'Rourke said, F the rules. So I know we're not.
But he's a Democrat, and Texas is run by Republicans.
Yeah, but you have some Republicans that silently think that way.
So let me ask you something. These Republicans that are not following our party rules, are they really Republicans or are they closet Democrats?
I think that they are elected officials. That's what I call them. I think that they are people that are part of this political elite that our founding fathers never meant for us to have. But yet, because of our own apathy, we have allowed that to happen. We're not as engaged and as involved as we should be. There's a core group of people, Pastor Bird, and you know this very well, that have a master's degree or PhD in electoral politics. But when you look at most people in the American society, and I'd even say here in the state of Texas, they operate with a 7th to 8th grade level on understanding, electoral politics. They'll sit down and before the election, they will either call their friends and say, who do I vote for? They'll just look at the commercials, and the prettiest commercials will get their vote. They will not get engaged. They will not study voting records or any of these things. They'll just believe whatever they're fed and whatever they hear. And that's a sad state that we see here in the United States of America and in Texas.
Yeah, so let's talk about Rule 44 in particular. So we don't know what's going to happen with all these censure resolutions that are flying from all the county parties right now. But in an ideal world, what is Rule 44 for our viewers who are not familiar with this rule in our party? How's it supposed to work?
It's supposed to work by saying if you are elected as a Republican here in the state of Texas, in whatever position down there in Austin, especially, that you will adhere to these core principles. You will adhere to these these resolutions that have been passed and become the party platform. And of course, when you look at the legislative priorities that we established for a particular legislative session, we just concluded the 89th, we would expect for our Republican representatives to go down and pass those legislative priorities. And understand this, when you go to a place that is completely run by the left, like a California, Colorado, or, name your state, Minnesota, they're not going over and joining with Republicans to pick a House Speaker. They're not giving Republicans any voice, any ability to say anything. But yet you see Republicans still showing up. They don't abscond and fly away like we see Democrats do. As a matter of fact, you even saw in Oregon where the state legislature there voted to kick Republicans off the ballot because they were, standing up. So this is that, I hate to put it this way, Pastor Bird, but this is that killer instinct that we lack politically. Okay, I'm not talking about literally, but a political killer instinct that holds people accountable. And I think that's what Donald Trump said when he said, go out and you can redraw and you can get 3 to 5 more congressional districts for Republicans in the state of Texas. It's not unconstitutional. It is not unlawful. Now, in the state of New York, they can't do it because they have a constitutional amendment in their state that says they can't do mid-cycle redistricting, but we can here. And we should have Republican states that reflect constitutional conservative principles and values. And so that really is what Rule 44 is about. And therefore, if you don't adhere to these things, if you are censored for some very specific reasons and actions at the local level, at your county executive committee level, they're elevated up to the state or Republican executive committee, and you can be taken off the ballot, I believe, for 4 years. And so it's not like a permanent ban, but it is something that says we're not happy with what you're doing. You're not representing us. You're not going out and doing what you said you would do when you're on the campaign trail. But yet you have, again, a political elite class that feels that they are entitled. And if they are not entitled, they will take you to court. And nobody, we have this litigation society. Nobody wants to, get caught up in any type of litigation. And, they bring in all of the hired guns because they have all the money, all the backing of the lobbyists and the PACs that emanate down there in Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into the 3 penalties that can be invoked from Rule 44 in a second. But before I do, you mentioned something about President Trump. Saying that, of course, we have the right to redraw congressional districts in Texas. It's ruby red Texas that I won by all those points. But yet he sends a mixed message to Republicans in Texas when he turns around and endorses the very Republicans that we're trying to censure. Explain the confusion from the national level and those of us that are here in the trenches here at the county level trying to understand who's Republican and who's not. How do we make sense of all this, Colonel West?
Well, it's kind of like in the military. Before you go into a combat operation, you're supposed to send your scouts out to gather and gain intelligence about, the opposition to report back to you, so you can better refine your plan before you go into that operation. I don't know who the people that Donald Trump is using as his eyes forward, his scouts down here in Texas, because they're not feeding him the right information. And I know that this whole school choice thing, because that's what it was based on, which really, when you talk about 100,000 kids, I hate to tell you, we got that right here in Dallas County. So there's not really a massive move toward educational freedom. There's a big difference between those two things, but everyone has got hung up on those two words, school choice. So I don't think that President Trump is getting the real intel on what's happening down here in Texas with these Republicans that are working with Democrats to select a speaker and not, passing all of that legislative agenda that is part of our legislative priorities. So, I don't know who has his ear out of the state of Texas, and I think that's where the problem is.
All right. So for those of our viewers who are watching that are not familiar with the actual censure process, so let's say a lawmaker violates the principles of the preamble of the Republican Party of Texas, and then they also violate one of the 8 legislative priorities we passed at the last state convention, and they did at least 3 of those infractions during their current term. So the county party decides to send up or vote on a censure at the county level. They get the majority vote. Is it 2/3 vote of the precinct chairs of that district? They have
of that district, of their district, yes.
So let's say they get the 2/3 vote from their district and they pass it up to this thing called the SREC. So what happens when that makes it to the SREC, and what are the penalties that can actually come about as a result of the censure request?
Well, I think the most drastic is the one that we have talked about, is removing them from the ballot. I believe, like I said, for 4 years. There can be a resolution that comes down. There can be a denial of them being able to get resources of the party to help them. And there could be a flat out endorsement of someone else that is running against them in a primary. So those are some of the options that the state Republican Executive Committee can vote on once they collect and get all of these different censure resolutions that are sent up from the county executive committees.
So you mentioned that the Dallas party censured, was it Angie Chin Button, and you said Morgan Meyer?
Correct.
Okay, so you got the 2/3 vote from the precinct chairs. It went up to the SREC, which stands for State Republican Executive Committee. What did they do with that censure?
Well, they're supposed to, at one of their meetings, bring that up. Well, it has to go through whatever committee of jurisdiction first. They will review the paperwork, and it'll be a thumbs up, thumbs down, voted out of the committee. Then it will go to the full SREC for debate and for vote. And that's the will of the body. So we are right now in a wait out mode to see what happens with the paperwork that we have sent up for the second time to the State Republican Executive Committee.
And when you sent the paperwork up to the SREC, did you ask for penalty 1 and penalty 3, or all 3 penalties, or one of the 3? What did you ask for?
Well, I think the thing is that, I'm not of the mindset to tell people what should happen, but you've got these 3 options. We're presenting what we're supposed to do. We're presenting facts. We're presenting the violations, and we're presenting the votes of their precinct, the people in the precinct chairs in their respective districts. So now it is up to the State Republican Executive Committee to carry that forward if they think it's egregious enough, or whatever level they see it as. But something has to be done. And again, if the State Republican Executive Committee decides that they got to take a hiatus for 4 years and not be on the ballot, not be supported, that's the decision that they have made, and I'm sure that the people here would understand that. These individuals already have primary opponents, and so if it is about not providing them the resources, if that's the decision that the Republican Party of Texas through the SREC makes, then that's fine. But we just want to see people held accountable. Just the same as we talked about, the Democrats, when they walk away, they have to be held accountable. Elected officials, again, they have to stop believing that there are rules for thee, but not for me. Because if you break a rule, if you break law, if you go against principles and values, there should be some ramification or consequence. I think that's the frustration that people are having.
Yeah, but Colonel, it seems to me that no one in Texas is really being held accountable. The Democrats walk out. There's no repercussions whatsoever because they can just walk right back into the next special session. The Republicans that are receiving the censure resolutions that are being notified right now, I heard there was one representative in Collin County last night who had a Zoom call with her precinct chairs and said that she's going to sick Alex Fairley on them to sue the precinct chairs. And so even if we get penalty 3, which is ballot removal, aren't these lawmakers just going to sue the party in court or the precinct chairs in court and walk away once again with no accountability?
Of course. That is actually part of the Marxist philosophy of, threats, coercion, intimidation, instilling fear. And it's sad to see that people are so concerned about holding on to a position that they would, bring lawsuits against their own people instead of saying, you know what, I will do better. I have not been accountable to you. I understand your frustrations. Hold me accountable. If you don't want to vote for me in the next election, I understand. But, I show some contrition of the heart. Instead of getting out there and saying, I'm going to sue you, calling down the precinct chairs, these people are, give me a break. These people are volunteers. What next? You're going to line them up against a wall? But the real thing, Pastor Burton, is that the most important consequence can be don't vote for them. Now, when you know that these people will sick lawyers, Eric Opiella, Alex Farley, whoever, when they will sick lawyers on people that are out there busting their ass, I hate to put it, but busting their ass to help them get elected, then they don't deserve your electoral support. And I think that's the most important thing, the level of apathy. That should be out all across the state of Texas. Every single news outlet should be reporting that a member of the Texas State House, a Republican, I don't care what part, but a Republican called precinct chairs and threatened them. To me, I would say I need to call the Texas Rangers on you.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. This is going to a whole nother level of intimidation like I've never seen before. So let's say that, a legislator gets yanked off the ballot in March. Let's say the county chair, let's say you, for instance, don't accept Angie Chin Button's application to be on the 2026 ballot. You reject it as the county chair. You don't accept, or let's say it goes to Abraham George and he rejects it. And they're going to sue us. Exactly on what grounds are they going to sue a private organization who has the right to create their own principles, platform, and rules and determine who represents their own party? We're a private organization. What are we being sued over?
They're upset because you're challenging their control and their power and their entitlement. And let me just be very honest and very clear. Do not think that you're going to sue me and I'm just going to lay down and take it. I will go to every national news media outlet and I will call you out. And guess what? I'm not going to any court. I will take whatever document you bring. I'll rip it up right in front of your face like Nancy Pelosi did the State of the Union speech, because I'm not playing that game. I've been on battlefields and I'm not going to have a bunch of pampered people that think they're entitled to something to force me to back down on my principles and values. And I think that right now, this is a line in the sand moment, just the same as Travis drew there at the Alamo for those of us that are constitutional conservatives in the state of Texas to say, you don't get to do this to us. You really don't. You don't get to call us and threaten us because you think that you're entitled to a certain position. No.
Yeah, I totally agree. So let's just talk about probabilities. Earlier on the interview, you mentioned that, the chances are fairly slim of getting them yanked off the ballot. We're probably looking at dozens, if not even more than that, of these censures getting filed right now in the months of August and September, October. Mm-hmm. How many of these Rule 44s do you think will actually be upheld by the SREC?
You got to ask the SREC. I mean, I can't get inside there. If we were in a court of law and I'm on the witness stand, I mean, I can't get inside anyone's mind and predict. This is about where do they stand, what are their principles and what are their values. But again, I think that, those individuals, their reputation is tarnished. I mean, the individual that you just talked about that called the precinct chairs, if that person gets reelected, then that's on the constituents there in the Republican Party that allowed that to happen. So I will tell you that I think that you're going to see another big wave of electoral losses for these incumbents in the Republican primary, like we saw a couple of years ago, because I believe that the tolerance level of this abhorrent behavior is overflowing now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now let's talk about the SREC body for just a moment. And for those of you watching who don't really understand our party process, we already mentioned that SREC stands for State Republican Executive Committee, and really they're the body that runs our party. There's two SRECs, a man and a woman from each of our 31 state Senate districts, and they basically determine, they're supposed to uphold what the delegates at the convention say that we want done in our party, correct?
Correct. They're supposed to be the voice, just the same as at the county level. The precinct chairs make up the county executive committee. So you're right. And again, these are elected positions. SREC members, they have to run for election, and they'll be on the ballot next March. So it's important for you to know who your committee man and committee woman is on the SREC. And the precinct chairs, that is a position that people have to run for that because they are accountable to the folks there in the precinct. And so you've got some people that, they just want a title. But we've got to make sure that we have people that are out there doing what is necessary, doing the right type of work, and being the body, the governing body of the Republican Party, being at the Texas state level or being down at the county level.
Yeah, now I understand from my friends who serve on the SREC that the SREC is actually quite conservative, especially since the last number of conventions where we've elected our SRECs. But I also understand that there was a special Zoom meeting held on August 15th, and that 17 of our SREC members voted to remove House Bill 4623 from the final report in order to protect 4 House reps who supported school districts over protecting the children who were sexually abused by school employees. So my question is the SREC body as conservative as we thought? Are they going to uphold Rule 44 censures, or are they really not as conservative as they say they are? That's my question.
Well, I think that you have some people that can be influenced. I'll put it in those terms. As you just talked about, you had a state house member that called down the precinct chairs. If you do not think that there are state house members that are calling members of the state Republican Executive Committee and trying to influence them unduly, you're out to lunch. And that is what happens. So yes, the body overall may be considered a constitutional conservative body, but you still have some very, let's call them GOP establishment holdouts that are there within that body that, for whatever reason, they tend to undermine some of the things that SREC body is supposed to be doing.
So we've got, 62 members of the body.
Correct.
You need a simple majority vote to uphold a Rule 44 censure violation?
Correct.
Okay, so basically 50% plus 1 vote is what they need. Okay, so what is your feeling on that subject? Do you think that some of these guys, like, let's just throw some names out there, the worst of the worst, Dade Phelan, worst of the worst Republican. Orange County is just met to pass another censure. They censured him a cycle ago. Now they're doing it again. That's going to go to the SREC. Would a guy like Dade Phelan, who we know is voted in by Democrats, because that's how David Covey lost the runoff, was because of Democrat voters. So we know Dade
in a
Phelan,
runoff.
Okay. In a runoff. Yeah, a Republican runoff.
Yes.
So we know Dade Phelan is a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. Do you think that this is the second time Orange County has tried to censure this guy, and they did uphold the censure, the body did the last time? Do you think that they'll invoke penalty 3 and actually kick Dade Phelan off the ballot?
Well, once again, you asking me to get inside someone's mind, but this is what I would present to you. Some people are going to make some phone calls because you know that the state Republican, well, the Republican Party of Texas has to raise money. And I'm sure that the people that are the key plank holders are going to make the calls to the chairman and others. Haven't been in that position. I understand this. I understand how it's played. I understand that, you've got to look and see what the governor and how he's weighing in on these type of matters, because this is what is happening. The Republican Party of Texas and some of your local county Republican parties, if they don't do the bidding of some of these quote unquote, they call them the whales, the big donors, the donor class, then they end up by the restraint or the constraint of those dollars flowing to them. That's how they're manipulated. That's how they're impacted. That's how they're influenced. So I would tell you that without a doubt, there are some phone calls that are being made. There are some, intonations and other threats that are being made. You do X, then Y is going to happen. You don't do Y, then Z is going to happen. And sadly, that's the nature of this business and how this has become here. So again, this is about some of those elected officials and how they're going to try to impact and influence this thing and create that sense of fear. Once again, that sense of intimidation that people say, you know what? I don't want this type of, trouble in my life. I just want to be able to go out. I thought that I was just volunteering to try to help the party, but now all of a sudden I'm getting calls about lawsuits and things of this nature. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, let me ask you a two-part question. There are people out there that are arguing that yanking Republican lawmakers off the ballot is the wrong approach because that's what primaries are for. It's far more effective just to get somebody else elected. But you and I both know trying to get an incumbent out is no small task. So my first question is, what is your philosophy or viewpoint on that modus operandi? And number two, do you think that we're going to see another massive cleansing of the Texas House in the 26th primary where we lose another 20 uniparty Republicans and really get more strong freshman conservative grassroots members in there?
Well, I will take your second part of the question first to say, yes, I believe that that's going to happen. Now, going to your first part of your question, look, Pastor Brandon, I was brought up in an old school household. When I did something wrong, there was an immediate consequence to it. There was an immediate punishment called a spanking. You don't sit back and say, well, we'll do this later. If you don't clean your room, I'm going to do this 2 weeks from now. No, you don't clean your room. And I told you to clean your room. Something's going to happen to you right now. Then on top of that, something else was probably going to happen to you. You're going to lose your, privileges of going out, or what have you. No TV, something. So I think that when we, have this mindset of, we don't need to do this, because it sends the wrong message, because the Democrats are going to look at that and say we're in disarray. Well, let me tell you something. The Democrats have purified their party. I remember being in Congress and Sylvester Reyes was the congressional representative from out in El Paso. He was on the Armed Services Committee with me. There were many other people that you would consider conservative Democrats, blue dog Democrats. And look at what the Democrat Party has done to those individuals. They got rid of them. They took them out left and right. So, this whole thing about we just need to continue to show unity. Well, why do you want to show unity with people that let you know that I don't care about your principles? Like O'Rourke said, F your rules, because it's about me. It's about my power. It's about my control. And if you don't allow me to play by my rules, then I'll bring a lawsuit against you. Who of the founding fathers would have ever thought that we come to a day when elected officials would threaten lawsuits against citizens and constituents? But that's the nature of where we're gotten to, and especially even here in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I agree. Just to your point there, a good example of the Democrats purging their own party was Sean Thierry. In the last legislative cycle, she crossed the aisle and voted for Dr. Oliverson's banned pediatric gender modification bill. And the Democrats found a challenger and they drummed her out of town in the next primary. So what you're saying is exactly spot on. The Democrats purged their own party. So why is everybody upset that the Republican precinct chairs that just want conservatives to be their elected officials and do what they say they're going to do, we decide to purge them, and then we take all types of vitriol for that?
Because you're supposed to just be subservient. And I guarantee you that Judith Zaffirini and Chuy Hinojosa, the two Democrat state senators that did not abscond and go off to Massachusetts, which enable the Texas State Senate to still have a quorum and pass those maps, I guarantee they won't be around. They're when they're next up for re-election, they won't be around.
Yeah, because the Democrats are pretty much good about group think. If you don't think with lockstep with them, you're out. Let's talk about our current chairman, Abraham George, good friend of mine, known him since 2020, since the same amount of time I've known you. Mm-hmm. Knew him when he was the county chair in Collin County, and he's been on my podcast actually twice in the last year. So good guy. But one of our viewers had a question for you, and here's the viewer's question. It seems like when you look at all of Abraham's photo ops in the last 4 to 6 months, it's always with Governor Abbott, Dan Patrick, some of these guys, even that we would call part of the uniparty. It seems like he's pretty chummy. Do you feel like that as a past chairman of our party, is that just a part of the job description of you take photo ops with everybody in the party, or is he allowing Governor Abbott to begin to water down our Rule 44 process by trying to make it easier to keep some of these uniparty Republicans back on the ticket and win in 26?
I'm not going to make any comment about Abraham George, the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, but I will say this: while I was chairman, I was never invited to the governor's mansion. I never had a photo opportunity with the governor or even the lieutenant governor. So I'll just leave it at that. As a matter of fact, the weekend that Memorial Day weekend when I had my motorcycle accident, it was because I was down there outside the governor's mansion talking about opening up Texas. And so I never got invited into the governor's mansion or any type of, soiree or anything of that nature. But that's fine. I'm happy to go eat at Five Guys. I'm glad to be with my wife, my kids, and my grandkids.
Yeah, totally understand. Well, thanks for your viewpoint and for answering our viewer's question. Another viewer also had a question that they wanted me to ask you. So the way that Rule 44 is written, the legislator can only be censured if 3 or more actions are taken during the current term in opposition to the core principles of the party. And also it has to be in opposition to the legislative priorities passed at convention. Do you think it was a mistake to confine Rule 44 violations to the priorities and core principles only instead of violations against the entire party platform?
Well, that's something that when we come up to the convention next summer, that they can look at expanding that. Because once again, you have to make sure that you're closing the gaps by which you can be exploited. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people are looking at. But if you're an elected official, Republican elected official, we expect you to do and act a certain way. And that comes from the very moment that you are elected into that office and how you carry yourself. So I think when we're trying to confine it and put it into a certain type of box, I think that we need to, open that box up a little bit more.
Yeah, totally agree. So in the last part of our interview here, I want to talk about Dallas County. What's going on in Dallas County since you became chairman? What changes have you been seeing in the party and in the apparatus? And even with, raising up new candidates to challenge the incumbents, what are you seeing as the trend in Dallas right now?
Well, I think first and foremost, we had a good, strong turnout in the November 2024 election. We closed that gap, the presidential gap, a little bit. We were able to win back the 5th Court of Appeals up here that was lost back in 2018 during that Robert Francis O'Rourke wave. I think the biggest thing is that we're getting our message out and we're expanding. We're getting into, especially South Dallas, into the Black community. And we're causing some consternation for people like Commissioner John Wiley Price, because we're going into his backyard. We're challenging folks. And I think that's what we need to do. We got to get better with candidate recruiting, and we are doing a better job with vetting. I'm not of the mindset of telling people you can't run. But I think that what we want to try to do is, really try to prepare people and get them to be better able to articulate our principles, our values, and talk about the issues. I think we got a great candidate in Sheldon Daniels, who will be running for Texas Congressional District 30, which is currently held by Jasmine Crockett. We know that she needs to go home and go away. Texas Congressional District 32 has been changed as part of this redistricting. It is now going to cover a northern portion of Dallas County, but then going to Rockwall, Hunt County, and over a little bit of Upshur County. So you're going to see a lot of people that want to run in that race because it's our district. So again, it is about being transparent. It's about saying that, we're going to stand for principles and values. We're not going to be dictated to by a donor class, which has been kind of the previous way of going. So I think that it takes 5 miles to turn an aircraft carrier. And when the Democrats, really were able to start transitioning Dallas County starting back in 2006, they have completely now taken over Dallas County as of the 2022 election. There are no elected Republicans in the leadership of Dallas County whatsoever. So we got to pick and choose our battles. We got to go after this county judge in this next election, the county DA, John Crusoe, who are causing a lot of problems, but we have to do it with a strong candidate. We have to do it on principles and values. And we have to talk about safety and security and law and order. I think that's something that everyone can understand.
Yeah, and how important is this primary coming up? I mean, you've got guys like Steve Toth that stepped down to run for Congress. Mm-hmm. Tony Tinderholt has retired from the House to run for commissioner in Tarrant County. And you've got, basically we got 20 strong Republicans elected in the last wave, but we were at 52 votes for reform speaker. And we need is a 75 or 76 votes, 76, right? 50% plus one. So we need 76 votes to get a real Republican elected from the grassroots as speaker in the 90th session. How important is this next primary? And if people are thinking about running, if they don't get the money from the whales, where do they get the money from to run these races?
Well, this is where the grassroots has to step up. I mean, the grassroots can talk a lot about, we don't want these individuals. Well, you got to support the individuals that are stepping up to the plate, like yourself. I think that also one of the things we got to do, we have to start focusing local. We have to start focusing, especially in our major urban population centers, on the city council races, school board races, county commission races, sheriff's races, things of that nature, because it's a numbers game, Pastor Burden. And when you start to look at how the left, even here in Texas, are trying to take control of the major urban population centers, that's when you look at a map of the state of Washington, the state of Oregon, state of Colorado, you see red all across those states, but these very strategic points of blue. And that's where your major, numbers are. That's why they're trying to flood illegals into those areas and not be touched. So I think that that's one of the things that Texas has to look at, is to start making sure that we figure out the battlefield calculus and even these urban population centers that we can affect so that we can start get Texas going in the right direction.
Let's talk about a couple of important races coming up. We've got a comptroller race. We've got a ag commissioner race. How important are those offices to Texas, and especially with seeing the shifting of the grassroots in the 26 primary to move us more to the right? How important will those races be overall with the overall picture of making Texas more red?
Well, I think it's incredibly important about the person that holds the purse strings. And remember, that whole school choice legislation that passed and was signed into law, the person that makes the decisions about, whether or not you can, have this vendor, that vendor has to be approved through the comptroller's office. So again, I think this is a very important place, and this is a very important place as far as, watching the purse strings here and making sure that we can move away from, a baseline budget. I mean, this past budget of the 89th session was one of the largest state budgets passed in Texas state history. We've got to get back to a point where we understand that we got to put more money into the pockets of the average everyday Texan and less of that money going down to Austin. So comptroller is very important. And then, of course, the ag issue, once again, the ag commissioner race. You think about what happened during that winter storm and how that decimated the agriculture industry here in the state of Texas. We got to make sure that we're having the right type of improvements there, and all of the food policies and food programs for the kids that comes through the Agricultural Commission's office as well.
Yeah, one of the issues I'm running on is abolishing property taxes because appraisal values have gotten so out of control. And I know we keep talking about property tax reform in the special session, which is just another Band-Aid to fix a leaking ship. Are we ever going to get to the point in Texas of abolishing property tax?
Not until you get these independent school districts that are more so concerned about the education of our children than about padding their pockets. Look, you cannot have, this is a complete violation of your natural rights. You know, John Locke in 1689, when he wrote the two treatises of government, he talked about natural rights theory. It was life, liberty, and property. Those are the three. When you talk about eviscerating private property ownership, that's a plank that comes out of the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. Right now, in the house that I'm sitting in this little studio in my home, my little office, if I pay off this house, I will never be able to own it because guess what? I have to continue to pay property taxes. If I don't pay property taxes, the state of Texas comes in and takes my home. So I'm then a renter from the state of Texas. That's a violation of my individual rights and freedoms. That's a violation of natural rights theory, the unalienable rights that are endowed to me from the Creator God, the Judeo-Christian faith heritage God. So yes, we need to look at something better. I think that we can start looking at a consumption-based tax system, not talking about a state income tax, but a consumption-based tax system here in the state of Texas that removes this burden of property taxes.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's talk about another issue that's cropped up ever since I decided to get into this race. Marijuana. Legalizing marijuana is now a buzzword everywhere. I think people keep asking me, Pastor, are you going to support THC levels at 0.3 or THC at all? And do you support cannabis and hemp? And I mean, they're fighting on both sides of the issue like crazy on this thing. I'd love to hear your viewpoints on, do you think Texas is going to legalize marijuana?
I hope not. When you look at the states that have done that, Oregon, Colorado, it has not been a good thing for them. You're talking to a guy that's never smoked, never drank, definitely never did drugs in his life. So I think you kind of know which way I lean toward this. But this is a national security issue. And this is also a Second Amendment issue. Why do I say it's a Second Amendment issue? Because as long as you have on the 4473 form, that question that asks you, are you under the influence of marijuana? Are you taking drugs, things of this nature? You're not allowed to go out and purchase a firearm unless you're Hunter Biden. Of course, you can go out and lie on it and not any type of ramifications. But if you are found to have lied on your 4473 form, you're out there, engaging in smoking marijuana, you're not allowed to have a firearm. We don't want that in the United States of America. The other thing is that the United States military still asks you the question if you are smoking marijuana, if you are, abusing drugs, taking drugs. We don't want to have a drugged out society of young people where we can't recruit to go into our military. So it's a Second Amendment issue. It's a national security issue. I don't want to see a drugged out populace. I know what Amsterdam looked like back when I was in the military. And if you travel to Amsterdam, when I was stationed in Europe in 84 to 87, as soon as you came back from leave, guess what you had to do? You had to have a urinalysis because people knew that, with that being the case up there, that you were exposed and you could probably be partaking of it. So no, I do not agree with that. I support CBD, but I do not want to see people drugged out.
Yeah, not to mention impaired driving. We already have enough distracted driving just with cell phones. And can you imagine people under the influence of marijuana driving down the highways of Texas?
Absolutely.
It's already the Autobahn, 100 miles an hour on the tollway. I can't imagine people doped out and on their phone driving 95 on the Dallas North Tollway. Can you imagine that?
No, I don't want to see that happen. Or going the wrong way on Dallas North Tollway.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, hey, last question I have for you. Another issue here in Collin County is the Islamization of Texas.
This is huge. That's huge.
I mean, I'm hearing more and more from people I'm talking to that this is going to be a major issue in my campaign. And honestly, on the religious grounds issue, because we have the First Amendment, I'm not sure you can prevent that except on the grounds of fair housing or, following Sharia law, which is not in line with the Constitution. But how do we stop the Islamization of Texas?
It's very simple. There was a report. Let me see. Maybe you know about this report. Let me see if I can find it back here. It was written. It was written by Sam Westrop, and I'll hold it up for you to see. Texas state government gives $13 million to Islamist mosques and community groups. This is a problem. $13 million of money here in the state of Texas went through the governor's office to mosques and centers that support Iran. Mosques and centers that the guy that killed the Americans in a New Year's Day in New Orleans at the beginning of this year was a congregant at one of these mosques in Houston. They received money through the governor's office as a grant. And you can pull this down. This is, let's see. Focus on Western Islamism. Sam Westrop, who lives from here in Dallas. Maybe you should have him on your podcast. But this is an incredible report that came out back on June the 10th of this year. So we have an issue. When you have on tape imams talking to some of these mosques that you can beat your wife, you just can't beat her to death. That's inciting violence. That's inciting and encouraging spousal abuse. We should not tolerate that here. So I think that this is a great report for you to review and making sure that we are not allowing an ideology that is antithetical to who we are, our constitutional republic, and our Constitution itself.
Yeah, and they're basically just wanting these epic city type developments so they have a place to practice Sharia law and they're protected.
Correct.
That law, correct?
No, we cannot have no-go zones here in the state of Texas. I mean, when you look at the reason why the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the President of France, the Prime Minister of Canada, and some of these other countries are saying that we want to recognize a Palestinian state, it's because they have allowed these people to come in, establish no-go zones, Sharia law, and protest in their streets. We should not have the flag of a terrorist organization flying here in the state of Texas. Shouldn't have it in the United States of America, period. And I think that that's one of the big challenges because Texas is on their radar. But again, check out that article written June the 10th. Islamist Watch is the name of the organization by Sam Westrop.
Awesome. Thank you for letting us know about that. Well, thank you so much, Colonel West, for coming on our show tonight. Just want to mention that I will be in McKinney on September the 9th, speaking at McKinney Values on the topic, should Christians be involved in politics? Steve Maxwell from Citizens Defending Freedom is going to be leading our panel discussion with other pastors and faith leaders on this issue. And so if you're in the McKinney area on that evening, you can go out to my website, danielnation.com/events to find that information. Would love to see you guys. Colonel West, it is so great to reconnect with you, my friend, and to spend time with you today on this podcast. I really appreciate you coming on today.
God's blessings, and you go out there and go get them.
All right, man. God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.